Suli, thank you for coming, bro.
Pleasure's all mine.
Appreciate you coming down.
Me.
So I've watched a lot of your stuff. You're a very lyrically gifted human being, mashallah, seriously. There's many people that do the poetry, all of that, but not many people, you know, express how you express it and at the same time make sense. You know, a lot of people nowadays, they do the rapping and all of that stuff, but it don't make no sense. It's just to rhyme at the end of it. But then there's other people that rhyme, but even in their rhyming, there's storytelling. So when you do your storytelling and, you know, the poetry that you do, where does it come from? Like, how did you even start such a thing?
With the poetry, I guess with more people, it was like initially that idea of like lyrics, you know what I mean? I think I started listening to rap probably when I was like in year 9. I didn't start listening from early because when I grew up in my house, you wasn't allowed to listen to music. Like we got to a point, like, you know, when my parents became Muslim and stuff, it was like we didn't really listen to music like that, although we did. So then I guess I remember getting into like listening to, my cousin gave me like a Jay-Z CD. So I remember listening to rap from like when I was like from year 9 to about like going into university. I was listening to it, but then at the same time, obviously, because you're Muslim, you couldn't be a rapper. Do you get what I'm saying?
You couldn't express that.
Yeah, and I didn't want to I didn't want to go into like music in that capacity. Like obviously, I feel like a lot of people kind of dabbled and tried, and it's not against anyone who was doing it, but I just felt like I was more comfortable like trying to express it through poetry. And then I was in university, and they asked me to come and do like a rap something, innit? Even though I wasn't a rapper, we had like a mock rap battle, and it was like, you should come and do, and I was like, you know what, I wouldn't do that, but I'll do some poetry. And I did that, and it kind of went well, and someone invited me to come and perform at their university. And then when I met my wife, who's my wife now, she was like, you're really good at this. I feel like you should pursue it. You know, that was in university. She was like, I feel like you should pursue it. So when I left, I studied law. When I graduated, it was kind of like, I wanted to pursue something that I felt like gave me more creative freedom. And then it was just like...
On top of being a lawyer?
No, I never went into law. So I graduated with the law degree.
Okay.
And then I didn't actually go into like practice, you know what I mean? I didn't do none of the practices around it because I was just like... I did law because, you know, I'm African, innit? And my parents were like, I wanted to do English. Like I've always had a passion for reading. That's like one of my biggest passions. But my mum was like, no, you have to do something academic. You know, you can't do something like... in that capacity.
Yeah.
So then once I graduated, I was like, okay, I'm free of this. I'm just going to try and pursue. And then it was just building, and then just studying online. You know, YouTube came about, you know, and then...
So you actually studied the art in its essence?
Yeah. I feel like more... I wouldn't say I studied poetry so much, lyric, but I studied social media. You know, this was the early days before it was like... It's like terms that are so common, like, you know, like algorithm, like, you know, like engage, target audience, like there's so many terms that, you know, are familiar now, but back then these were all mystery to everybody. You know, the idea that you could engineer success online it was kind of like everyone's just having fun. Okay. So I was very immersed in that process of educating myself in social media and YouTube, and then, you know, alhamdulillah, it was able to take off. When it got to like the tipping point, but it took many years to get there. Like,
so one is that angle of, you know, studying side of like social media and how to kind of have a bigger impact. But going back to his point, I mean, you're an artist, and it's something I've, you know, in our discussions I've been telling you. Is it Allah has given you that from the beginning? You are kind of like lyrically talented from the beginning, or is that required a lot of study and hard work to reach the level that you reached? What was it? Is that in your family? Was there somebody also from your parents or grandparents talented in that way?
No, you know, so the thing about my family, if you ever meet my dad, like we all know how to talk. Like, do you get what I'm saying? Like, if my dad steps in the room, he's like, he gets attention, you can command the attention of the room. It's not something that I kind of like, I thought that I had a gift that, but it's only when I look back. I remember when I was finishing secondary school, and the teacher was like, "Can you do the speech for the class?" And I don't know why they asked me. Do you get what I'm saying? But I've always been able to kind of articulate myself, and I think when I got more confident, then it started to manifest. I've never been too shy in front of a crowd. That's probably one of the things. But I think at essence, I've always been able to kind of articulate myself in front of people, in front of an audience, you know. And then when I graduated or when I was in university, it was just consistent, like repetition, you know. I'd go from, you know, I'd do like 2 events in one night, you know, or I'd go from like Hackney to like South London to perform in some little like pub or something, you know. So there was a lot of repetition, and I just used to write non-stop. Like I I had lots of jobs, but I never had like a proper job. Like my you know, I'm that person that was on shift and I was writing at the back of the receipt. You know what I mean? So I've always had that, like, I needed to get better at this because I have a passion for it. But I'm always, like, even now I'm still learning to write. I'm taking writing courses. So it was cultivated, but I think that audience thing at some point, like, maybe it's inherited or something. You know, my mum says, like, my dad has always been able to speak, so maybe.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. I mean, interesting one thing is, you know, sometimes, especially in the Muslim community, and maybe I'll ask that later on, but they feel that if you want to benefit, let's say, from an Islamic perspective, then there's only one field or a few fields. Or, you know, become a scholar, become a hafiz, become an imam, and so on. But, you know, in the time of the Prophet, peace upon him, there was a poet, Hassan bin Thabit. Was a poet, would defend the Messenger of Allah lyrically, you know. So do you see yourself in that kind of like category where I can, you know what, change the world for better through my poetry?
I feel like, yeah, you know, I feel like that's always been my goal. I was always like, I wanted to break boundaries with this art form that is kind of like what I do or is specific, you know. And I feel like, you know, alhamdulillah, I was able to I've had a lot of success with the spoken word. It's not reached the level I want it to reach, but I definitely have that, you know. Like I said, now I'm learning to write more long form stuff and like literature. And hopefully I'm still trying to take it a bigger ceiling with that. But yeah, I guess in my heart, that is always what I felt like I can do. Take this and kind of like impact the world in a way that's unique to what's happening right now or what has happened previously, you know. And going back to what you're saying, I always, I mean, I didn't know that specific situation, but I've always thought like poetry or the spoken word is like the oldest human art form. It's persevered from, you know, and I feel like there's so much value in it, but it's like, in this day and age, you have to combine it with so many other things to connect.
It's become vintage, hasn't it? Yeah. Not a lot of people really do it now. It's more rapping and music more than the art form of speaking.
Yeah.
If you read all the people of the past, even like Marcus Aurelius and these type of people from like...
Yes, you know what
they spoke in poetry. Like when they're trying to get their work, that's how they literally... Even the Prophet ﷺ, when you hear his hadith, you'd think he's doing poetry. Like it rhymes. Yeah. Majority of his speech, it rhymes at the end. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah,
so people talk speaking serious, whereas today it's only the art people like you that are trying to, you know, overthink and articulate it in that way. So hence it even looks even more glamorous or whatever once it's done. Whereas back in the day, that might just been a normal form. Do you know what I'm trying to say to you? So I think even when Imam was saying with regards to like, I see that from your stuff though, personally. Like, I don't really listen to many things, but poetry, things like that, I like listening to. And when I listen to your one, there is that essence that you seem like you want to portray or change your mindset. It's not just, let me put something out there for the sake of putting something out there. Do you know what I'm trying to say to you?
Appreciate it.
And moving on from that, where do you think the aspiration comes from though?
The aspiration?
Like to aspire to be a poet or...
For me, I just feel like if you're going to do something in this world, you should do it well, or you should pursue it to the furthest it can be, because, you know, it's interesting because I always look like, you know, we're all gonna die, do you understand what I'm saying? And I feel like when you're here, you should think about what am I going to leave behind, or what is the message that I want to leave behind, you know what I mean? So I feel like whenever you do something, you should do it with an intention to leave a mark, you know, maybe before I had kids, or maybe for future generations or something, you know, like I always look at stuff like that Quran, and even like, you know, other religious books. I always look at them like the aura I have for like words that have persevered for thousands of years. Like for me, that's, you know, like I have a fascination with that stuff. Like you say, philosophers or even speakers, you know what I mean? Like, Sheikh, I think you're a great speaker. The reason I'm sitting here is because, you know, you captivated me. First time I came to the masjid, you know, I'm always going around, my son goes to school in the area, so I'm always trying to find the masjid. And I came and I was like, this brother can really speak, you know. And I spoke to my wife, she's not even Muslim, and she was like, oh, if you really like it, the way he speaks, you should talk to him. You know what I mean? You should go and talk to him. So, and I came looking for you the next week, and you wasn't there. I came to the front, you wasn't there. I said, I can't find this brother. So it's only when we was at Ashley's show. Mm-hmm. And then you came up to me, and I said to you, I recognize this guy's voice. You know what I mean? That's what I'm looking for you. But I've always been captivated for people who can stand, you know, and speak to people and articulate and, you know, and impact them with a message. For me, it's kind of like the highest form of communication, you know?
Of course. But even in that, see, success, they say it leaves footprints. It doesn't just come about. Do you know what I'm trying to say to you? So when you speak about aspirations or whatever, I always ask people that reach somewhere, it comes from a younger stage though. You must have read something, or your dad must have advised you, or your mum must have advised you, a certain something happens in life that makes us steer into a particular path. Because I can tell you, we can get 100 people right now, and I guarantee you maybe one of them will say what you just said. A lot of people don't say, I want to aspire and leave a footprint. And they just want to live and do the basics in life, have fun, play around. That's just life. So when you say what you say, I would ask further, like, in your young days, was there certain things you was told or read or books or videos or movies or whatever it may be that made you think, you know what, I want to aspire to leave a footprint?
Yeah, I feel like my influences at a young age, outside of sports, because I got into sports I found a lot of identity in playing basketball when I was a bit older, but from a young age, it literally comes from my dad, you know. And just to speak about the impact of my dad was the first person in my family to come to Islam, do you know what I'm saying? But I was the back of him, then, you know, my mum came, and then my aunt came, and then we have like a segment of our family that's all Muslim, you know what I mean?
Okay.
But he's always been a thinker, you know what I mean? I grew up in a household where, like, even though he was never quite intentional about it, but I always thought like reading and philosophy was cool, because he used to tell me these like stories about like Greek philosophers, you know. He would tell me something like, what's the guy that invented the lever? Was it Archimedes or something like that? You know what I mean? He'd say something like, give me a lever and a place to stand and I'll move the world. And I just thought that stuff was so powerful, you know what I mean? Like being able to, you know, and he would say like, you know, so he taught me a lot about that stuff. So from a very young age, one thing I always liked was reading, and I also had an interest in philosophy, you know. I feel like he likes to interpret, maybe, and that's probably why he came to Islam, but he likes to interpret life in many different ways. So I always had that influence of like, and I think that's even at a young age why I gravitated towards the rap music that I like, because it was very like different, you know. And I was,
that stage back in the day.
Yeah, exactly. It was interpreting the world in a ways that like no one else was articulating it to me, you know. And it was like, so I was never the person to be into something because it makes you dance, and you know, it's not my kind of thing. But yeah, that whole
dad had a basically
impact.
Yeah, like Malcolm X. These people were my heroes. You get what I'm saying? You know what I mean? These are people that like I look, and it was that time as well when they became Muslim. It was that time where, you know, it was like there was never nation, but it was like speakers were. You know, it was like
impact.
Yeah.
So one thing you mentioned, you know, like leaving a footprint. Now, a lot of people, they will be in the, let's say, in the, you know, the field of arts. They'll be leaving footprints with their way of thinking, you know, in terms of, might be just music in general, it might be love songs, it might be various things. But with your poetry now, your poetry is deep, akhi. Yeah, education, hijab, the one with on life with Muslim Bilal and Castillo.
Oh yeah.
There's deep thinking behind.
Thank you.
You know, and positive, how do you say, legacies that you're going to leave behind. What made you be inclined towards that way of kind of like poetry and deep thinking and reflection and so on?
I guess it aligns with the way I want to live my life and the influences I have. But I just always thought, like, if you're going to say something, you have to say something that matters. You know, I think now I see it more so than ever, but I always thought that if you say something that matters, it would live with people for longer. Do you know what I mean? Because it has an important message, you know, and I was always just like, if you say something, it has to matter to somebody. It has to mean something, or it has to. I never looked at these things as just like entertainment. I always looked at them as a way to leave an impact, you know, or there's someone listening that needs to hear it, you know, and it's gonna hopefully, you know, people message me sometimes and be like, I watched a video about education and it changed my life, you know. Even at Ashley show, this act came up to me and he was like, you changed my life. I can't internalize that. It's hard for me to be like, it means something, you know what I mean? But I know it's done something for his life, so it means there was a reason for making it. Do you know what I mean?
I think what Sheikh Haytham, one of the statements he makes, he says, if something comes from the heart, it reaches the heart. Do you get what I'm trying to say to you? When something is written from the heart, it reaches the heart. And sometimes you don't even know the impact you're having in life. You're just speaking what's true to you and what you want to bring about in life. And it might be just one person, two people, but that person that's their heart is also open, it reaches that person. Do you know what I'm trying to say to you? Because if it was meant to be for everyone, it's like similar to the Quran. The Quran is a healing for everyone. But there's many people that read it and there's no healing in them whatsoever. Why? Because the heart is already closed. But the people that are willing to listen, their heart is open. When they hear something that's from the heart, it reaches the heart. And I think that's where it is with like the brother you just said. He heard it and he said he changed his life. And for creators or whatever, it's hard to think that it's reached the heart like that. But that's what we should think like that.
Yeah.
We should think when I write, I know it's going to impact someone else's heart. And of course it should change your heart if your heart is open. Do you get what I'm trying to say? But moving on from that, so give us a little bit about your background. Where are you from? You know, you said your mum and dad became Muslim. What's your background? Like, was you born here, etc.?
So I was born here. I don't even think I've ever told the kind of like dynamics of me growing up as a Muslim before. But yeah, so I was born here. I lived in Ghana for like 3 years. And then I came back here when I was like in year 3, 4, 5. You know what I mean? Okay. So then my parents became Muslim around when I was probably like going into year 6. You know what I mean? And I didn't really understand that much. So I've grown up like Christian, so I know a lot about Christianity. Like I've grown up around like Christian family, you know, like my dad's mum, you know, read all the Bible stories, which actually helped because I know all the stories from a Christian perspective. So I grew up, and then he became Muslim, and all of a sudden, you know, we're going to the masjid and they're speaking Arabic. And what's interesting to me, the time at which I came Muslim, like I felt like I have a very different experience to a lot of like the brothers I speak to, like in terms of like who came a lot later, because at that time, especially we used to live in like more east, we moved about a bit, you know what I mean? But being Muslim was very different in the sense that like being a black Muslim was unheard of. Like I had to explain to someone every time that I'm not Somali. Do you understand what I'm saying? No, it was very like, you know, having that dynamic or having to go like trying to find, is it halal, all that kind of stuff. And you know, and my parents would even send me to like to madrasa, but I was like the only black kid there, you know. I remember like the kids would call me nigger and everything. This is in the masjid.
Way.
Do you understand?
East London.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to mention the mosque I'm going to go to. Yeah,
of course.
I'm not going to. You know what I mean? So I remember there's quite a distinct situation. I remember I was praying, like we finished with praying, and one of the kids was like punching me in the back. Do you get what I'm saying? And I remember after the prayer, one of the acts was like, it said, older brother said, pulled us aside. He said, if you're not going to fight, you make fight like men. Your other's bigger than the kid, but he goes, don't do that. We're during the salah. So I had it was like coming to Islam wasn't like, so people often like to me, you don't come across Muslim, I don't know you're Muslim, because at that time I grew up, it was more like just trying to like assimilate or just be, you know what I mean? Like I've been at the park like with my, I remember like my uncle, he became Muslim as well, and I'm there with his wife, and at that time she was wearing niqab. Like to wear niqab was the kids chased us out of the park, ninja, like throwing stuff. Do you get what I'm saying? And this is like, so
other Muslims?
No, they're not Muslims. They was like these like white British kids.
Okay,
you get what I'm saying?
So you're basically getting it from Muslims and at the same time getting it from.
Do you get what I'm saying? Like growing up, like that kind of like that dynamic.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? But at the same time, it was a very interesting time because I feel like that's when a lot of the like different things were coming into the deen, like, you know, like the nasheeds. We used to listen to a lot of the ones, what's the name?
Imam knows that time. What the shoes was on them times.
Yeah, that's
you know them ones where it's like we couldn't play music but we played the tape. Yeah. You know, at that time, and I feel like at that time, being a black Muslim, it was kind of like, I wouldn't say there was a bit of a militant, not saying you want to attack people and stuff, but it was like kind of like having to like protect yourself, you know, like the kind of like American mindset, you know. So it was like, and you know, I go to my uncle with like to like speakers corner and stuff like that. So it was like, there wasn't that many people you could relate to at that time. Do you get what I'm saying? It was a very kind of enclosed experience with my family. You know, we'd be fasting in school and people don't understand what you're doing. And, you know, like now seeing the shop signs of halal on the shop, there was nothing, you know what I mean? We'd get that one pizza here and there, like from like,
it'd have to be basic with vegetables and
now you're pretty much cool, but it's like, but then I remember like, you know, and then like this community started to expand. So I remember growing up like, with Islam having to kind of like, it was kind of like coming into this world, but kind of like trying to find my place in it. Do you get what I'm saying? So never really feeling that comfortable in either side of like or the Muslim. But then as you grow up, you know, things start to change. But yeah, so that I was born. I grew up in the UK.
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to say. So till 6, you wasn't Muslim at that.
No.
So your life was what, more like Christian based?
Yeah, heavily. Like we're Africans. Like not Africa. I keep on saying African. West African, Ghanaian. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So like,
both mum and dad are Ghanaian.
Yeah, both mum and dad.
And so you lot used to go to church and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Like,
so have you ever asked your dad like what made him become Muslim at that age when you was obviously 6 and he was obviously whatever age?
I've asked him. I even asked him when he was here recently. And he was just like, you know, his views change over time. My dad's views have changed over. He was just like, a lot of the stuff he just saw in Christianity didn't make sense, you get what I'm saying? And he was just kind of like, he never has like a very, like, my dad is a very kind of like, he's a very serious person, but he's not intense. You get what I'm saying? So he's always joking about stuff. Like, he's an interesting character. And he was just kind of like, the stuff, the English people, all that stuff, it didn't make sense. And I think as well, at that time, being a black person, there was a strong affinity with what was going on in America, you know, that kind of like movement. So he was just kind of like, he grew up in a Christian household. He saw how everything they were saying in Ghana, and Ghana's very strict. And he was like, it didn't make sense. It wasn't resulting in what they were yielding, you know. And he was watching something on TV. Was it my guy Ahmed Dida? I think he was watching him on TV, and he said he saw that, and he was like, my mum tells the story better, but he saw that, and he was like, nah, this brother's making sense, you know what I mean? And then he went to one of the masjids, and you know, and then he kept on going, and I think he took Shahada, and then I think my mum kind of saw the transition, and she was like, yeah, but he was like, I remember he said he went to one of the masjids in the north, and he goes, he remembers back then they were recruiting people to go like overseas, like, do you get what I'm saying? He was like, he knew, you know, he was like, it was a very different kind of...
Tabligh, Jamaat Tabligh.
What was that one?
Jamaat Tabligh.
What's that?
I think they gather in masjids and they go around the globe and stuff. And
I don't, yeah, maybe, I don't know, but it was like, it was like different, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he was very like, so
that made the household change a lot.
It made the household change, but not in a way that I tangibly noticed. But what changed was like the things we could and couldn't do.
Because you're young still.
Yeah.
You're still young, so it might just be the halal and haram. We can't eat pork. We can't do this.
Drink.
Yeah, do you understand what I'm saying? You know, but they said, they gave me good foundations, because, you know, I've never drunk a day in my life. I've never smoked a day in my life. You know what I'm saying? Sure. Because we had those foundations to be like, to grow up on. And then...
What about the name then? Because obviously your name is what?
Suleiman, yeah.
So was that changed, or was that always given to you from...
No, my name's Daryl. So my name prior to that was Daryl. But no, I only ever get called Daryl like on passports. Like, that's still on my passport.
Okay. So how did the name come about then? Because you obviously became Muslim, you could say, from 6.
Yeah.
Did you change it at a later age?
No, my mom gave it to me.
Okay, so once they became Muslim, they said...
Yeah, Suleiman. Yeah, and I didn't start going by it until we went... when we moved to another school in East London. And then when I moved to that school in East London... was Isle of Dogs, so there was a lot of like Bangladeshi, Pakistani people, so there was a lot more Muslims when I was in that area, and that's when I started to kind of like
use the name.
Yeah, we started to use the name, and there was a lot more. I was around a lot more Muslims, and it wasn't even really until I went to, so that was my secondary school experience. And even then, I think there was only like a few Somali people in our school. So even then, when it was like during Ramadan, the white people would say to me, why are you doing that as well? You know, I thought it's like the Asians supposed to, you know what I mean? So, but then you're like coming into it. And I guess it wasn't until I really was in my second year of college. And I remember this guy came from, where did he come from? He might have come from Brixton or Peck. Brixton, I think, came from Zavi. And we was in Middlesbrough. I went to Middlesbrough for a year, for the last year of college. And he came and, you know, he's like, man them. And he said, I'm Muslim. He goes, good to see you. And I was like, in my head, I was thinking, bro, like, Muslim don't really, he's like, bro, I'm Muslim. And he goes, yeah, he said, bro, of course, man, took my Shahada. And he goes, better of us like a Muslim. And then he started showing me all these DVDs, and these men are rapping, and they're saying, you know, and they're speaking in Arabic, you know. And I'm thinking, but I'd never seen nothing like this in my life. You know what I mean? I remember the first time I even did like an Islamic show in South London, and there was just black people in the front, and I was like, what is going on? It blew my mind.
You never seen so much black people.
Never. Like even Abu Bakr coming up to me first time, you know, when he first started like the road, coming up to me, I was thinking, he drove me into, like, I was telling the story, he drove me into like the blocks, and I thought I was done for. I was like, what is it like? I thought this guy is like,
setting you up,
bro, you know what I mean? But yeah, so it was more so like when I met him and he started showing me like the, because for me that never really happened. Like, I grew up in North, but that never really happened the same way it did in South. You know what I mean? That whole kind of like confidence about
your way of life.
Yeah, confidence, and you know.
But one thing is, in terms of the Muslims, you know, there's a lot of ignorance. So look, if you look into early history of Islam, the hijrah of the Prophet, the migration, the first migration of the Sahaba was to Africa. Africa had Islam before it went to, let's say, Asia, Far East, and so on. You know, Sahaba came to Ethiopia, Habasha.
Yeah. You know,
and even as a continent, Africa as a continent, you know, you say, look, they're looking at you, they're judging you by a race, your ethnicity, to say, look, you're not a Muslim. You know, what makes a person looking, let's say, Asian, be a Muslim? There's Hindus in India and Pakistan and Bangladesh and Christians and so on. So that ignorance, that needs to be challenged. That's number one. You know, the other thing is in terms of, you know, in your poetry, did Islam have an influence in this? whether it's Islamic thought, Islamic thinking, whether it's Quran, Hadith, Seerah of the Prophet, peace be upon him, anything had an impact in you writing what you wrote?
Oh, 100%. I felt like I always had an obligation to kind of like impart some kind of, but it's like, it's trying to find the line between knowing that there's a crowd full of people who are not necessarily Muslim, but trying to communicate that to them in a way they can understand it, and it's interesting because like performing, it's actually the point you said about Africa is interesting because when I went to Ghana, I never had the same issue because Ghana's like 50-50 Muslim.
I didn't know it was 50-50.
No, it's like, it's very well split. Like if you go to Ghana, like the only thing is the Muslims tend to be, no, they're not poorer. Some of them like rich. There's a lot of Muslims. Yeah. But when in Ghana, it was like,
one of the brothers said, you hear the adhan aloud everywhere.
Yeah, it's different.
It might be 3-4 mosques and you're hearing it aloud. It's like, you feel like in a Muslim country.
Yeah, in Ghana, you never, on Eid, everybody celebrates. Like, do you understand? Everybody, Muslim, everyone knows it's Eid. Like, do you get what I'm saying? It's completely different. But yeah, one of the things I was always trying to strike that balance of saying stuff, that I feel like it's in line with the deen, but it's also in line with like human, like, like what's going to benefit you as a person. And it's funny because I used to do a lot of Islamic events initially. And, I don't know, like, I don't want to go into like racism and stuff like that too much, but every time I used to perform, and this is one of the reasons a lot of people say you don't do a lot of Islamic events until like all the stuff's like, every time I perform, they'd call me aside after and said, oh, this person complained about this. Oh, do you know you this poem? Can you change this? Can you change? I remember there was one event, it was happening in like one of the Royal Docks, and this after uni, like when I just started, I did 3 days in a row. Every single day someone complained about something. Every single day. And I was just like, it got to a point where I was just like, I'm just like...
worth doing it.
I was like, what is the point? Do you get what I'm saying? It was just like, it's like, I can't even like... And I don't you've heard my work. I don't think I'm saying anything negative. You get what I'm saying? Yeah, and it just got to the point where I just felt like maybe the way I'm communicating...
You know what it is? I think it's just your levels, Akhi. Sometimes, you know what? I'm not the Muslims in general, but we've lost, that artistic side in our cultures across the globe. So they don't appreciate when art is coming. It's too high for them. They would prefer something simple. But when you're coming with your level, it's basically going up their heads. That's what's happening.
Hopefully, but it must. You know what I mean? I'm not going to take credit or be like, yeah, they don't understand. But it was becoming an issue. Like I used to do a lot of like, a lot of events like that, and it was just.
Did they tell you anything specific, or was it? Would they say, "Oh, he swore," or was it?
And then the things that I would never swear, but
so what were they complaining about?
Like for instance, I used to have this poem called "The Box." Like I don't even now. It sounds mad to call it the box, because the way the term has changed. But it was about like not like about a young girl who goes through the thing and she sleeps with a guy. Do you understand? And the whole poem was kind of like about don't do that. Do you get what I'm saying? Or like the repercussions of how men will use women. Do you understand? Yeah. So there's nothing explicit in it, but obviously the subject matter is a bit like kind of like taboo in a way, and sometimes there may be like a young kid, I don't know, do you understand what I'm saying? Or sometimes I may make a joke like, I don't know, but it was always like,
talking about that kind of thing.
Yeah, or maybe, you have a poem, it's about knife crime, you know what I mean? But the event is like, everyone is supposed to be appraised, but so people might not want to hear about like knife crime going on in London, do you get what I'm saying? Or sometimes I had poems that were a bit more comical and they're not like that serious, but it's still a serious message, but, so it was...
You know what it is sometimes, like, they don't want reality to be discussed. Or sometimes parents think, kids, they're not aware of what's happening. Why is this poet bringing this up? Not knowing, kids know more. They're kind of like,
far more
affected by this and so on. So I think that is an issue.
That's what I really felt. That's in my head. I was just like, a lot of people don't want reality. Do you get what I'm saying? And I was just like, I just don't have that much energy to try and accommodate for that. But I feel like that was my biggest issue. I felt like...
I'm sure it would have been a minority though.
Of course it's a minority.
But the minority affects as well.
Yeah, there's always one person will say to the organizer, and the organizer's thinking, So
it's only one thing, like changing just the society. So sometimes what happens with us, we're talking about Muslims, there's a big kind of like barrier, and it's like us and them. And to affect change, I've got to be separated. Not knowing great leaders of the past, Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, Jesus Christ, peace upon him, Moses, they were there for everyone. Benefiting everyone and trying to change everyone for the betterment. Even if we come to a recent time, Muhammad Ali, loved by everyone, resonates with everyone. And that's, I think your poetry is, you're trying to target everyone so that everyone can be affected. Is that a right kind of like, thinking?
Yeah, because I mix with everybody, but a large part of my family. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, I have people that are not Muslim in my family. Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's like for me, it's always like, how do I kind of like, how do I
general
speak?
public,
How do I
to
speak
everyone.
to the people I know? You know what I mean? It's never an intention to be like, oh, I need to appeal to everybody. But it's like, how do I say something that I can send to the people I know? And it's going to resonate. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, even if you do take a poem like the Anissa song one, where it's talking about like a Muslim woman, it's like it's still a relatable scenario because like, she's a woman and she's vulnerable because of her beliefs. I feel like everybody can relate to that, whether you're Muslim or not. Do you understand? Even though it's very specific,
Why have you taken a step back, Akhi? Seriously, why?
First of all, like I said, educating. Like I've been working more on a book. I've worked on a novel, but I took like a writing course, like a summer course at like Stanford University. I've been working I've actually been trying to learn how to do more long form literature writing. That's one of the biggest things. I've spent a lot of time working on trying to develop my craft. But also, I think the big thing was I just kind of, before, the way social media was before, I'm not saying it was less strategic, but also it was like, you could have your kind of community and that's it. You could have your space, you know what I mean? But now it's like, you have to find a way to appeal to everyone every single time. Do you get what I'm saying? It was a lot, when I first started, it was a lot more like, I could make a 7-minute video and people could watch it. Now, if I want to make a video, it has to be 30 seconds long, 1 minute long, all that kind of stuff. You get what I'm saying? Like, you have to find a way to cater to everybody.
Everyone, yeah.
Marketing was a lot more fluid. So I guess I fell out of love with that element of it a little bit, and I wanted to grow my craft. And then personal.
What element? Sorry, the
Marketing.
Yeah, the social media element. I fell out of love with knowledge is a gift and a curse, because the more you realize how much you're being you're making, the more you I've been on YouTube for so long, I know how it works. You understand what I'm saying? In the sense that it's kind of like, if you're not feeding the algorithm, people are not going to see a video. You can have 100,000 subscribers, but only a certain percentage are going to see that because of how often you upload or how frequently you upload. Or, for instance, your content is an hour long, so the algorithm's going to service it more because it can have more adverts in it. Do you understand? So I was feeling a bit restricted in that creative element, but that's no excuse. But I think more so it was like, I was trying to grow. I was trying to grow to the level I thought it was supposed to be. And I had one major setback that made me feel like, I need to step back and reevaluate. So I was supposed to do a big show in the Brixton O2 Academy, you know what I mean? And that would have been a big deal for a poet, and I've done big shows, and this was the culminating point. And then it's kind of like that the rug got pulled out of me before the show went live. The promoters pulled the plug. They were like, we don't want to do this, blah, blah, blah. And that was kind of a big setback. And the way I took the setback, not only on an emotional level, but I was like, I need to reevaluate how I'm approaching this thing if I want to take it to where I want to go to. And that's when I just went back into the lab, and I was like, if I'm a poet, it seems like it has this ceiling because I'm not a musician. But if I'm a poet and I can write and I can make literature and books, it seems like it has a higher ceiling this way. So it was kind of that process of self-discovery.
So you got to a position where you found yourself, you had to pivot.
You know what I mean? Yeah, you had to pivot, And
so you've lost the passion?
No, the passion, I tell my wife all the time, I miss spoken word. And I was working with a lot of people, and what happens is, specifically from a visuals perspective, is a lot of people you start working with, this person falls through, that person falls through, and it's kind of you get to a point where you start out, you're the underdog and everyone wants to help you, but then you get to a point where you're a bit bigger and everyone expects different things, and it needs to be this, and people start to let you down, but you know what I mean? And there was a lot of politics that I didn't anticipate when you got to a certain level. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's not so I could never really take a step back because I'm always working on something. Do you get what I'm saying? But it's more so
So when you say working now, you mean you're writing literature, you're writing books?
Yeah.
You want those to be published? Are you writing plays, dramas? Is that what you're doing?
Not plays, dramas, literally literature. Literally at the moment I want to do books and I want to do live stuff. So even my wife the other day was you need to start performing live again, and I have to, because my whole goal is to do usually a big show every year, and make them into quote unquote specials, and then put them out and keep on growing that, you know what I mean? But yeah, so I'm always writing spoken word, but I feel because I've got to a certain level that comes a bit more second nature. I'm just trying to get the literature side of the thing growing as well.
There's a guy who does something similar. I forgot his name, man. I think he's from America. He's got a lot of viewings, like millions. He talks about school.
Muslim, non-Muslim?
He's non-Muslim. Okay. Talks about the school is waste of time of going to school. He talks about a lot of political kind. I need to find his name.
In spoken word.
It's spoken word, yeah.
I inspired a lot of people. I'm not gonna lie.
Spoken word, yeah.
What's that brother from? Is he Canadian? Buna Muhammad.
Oh, he's the G. I didn't inspire him. He's the G. I didn't inspire that. He's a bad guy.
My point was gonna say, is there anyone out there that you look up to that's doing something you're doing, or is it a niche market that you're trying to open up, kind of thing?
You know, I feel like if I'm being as humble as possible, alhamdulillah, like I feel like I was able to kind of like to break boundaries in what was being done in spoken word. And I think because before I was doing it, there wasn't really a lot of people putting spoken word on the internet in that capacity. Because obviously there's other people that I took inspiration from, you know, like there's a guy called Jefferson, what's it called? There's the actual poem, the one that actually took off, the viral one. There was this guy who made a poem called Why I Hate Religion But Love Jesus. And I flipped that around and said, why I hate school but love education. You know what I mean? But before that, I was still uploading consistently. But so there was people I took inspiration from, but there was doing spoken word on the internet wasn't, unless you're doing it live in front of a microphone.
Yeah, it wasn't a big thing.
And I think one thing I got frustrated with as well is I felt like when you're always the forerunner, like you take all the kind of like hits and then it's like, who else is going to break the boundary so you can follow through? And it was like, I just felt like there wasn't a lot of inspiring things happening in that space. So I was like, maybe I need to grow in another space and then contribute that towards this space and see where that takes me. But like I said, knowledge is a gift and a curse because like you said, scaling or rebranding is a business term. Sometimes as an artist, you don't need to know that. Just keep on making, you know what I mean? Don't overcomplicate it. Course. And I have a tendency to kind of like
complicate it,
strategize, you know, because I feel like it's one of my strong suits, but at the same time, it can be a hindrance, you know.
One thing though, you know, from an element of shukr, gratitude, and I mean by gratitude, you know, it can be internal, it can be, you know, verbal, it can be in actions. So that gratitude to Allah for what Allah has given you as a gift, in terms of spoken word, and also, you know, the concept of jihad in Islam, it can be by the pen, it can be by the word, You know, I don't know if it's a biblical statement, the pen is mightier than the sword, meaning, you know what, and this is my, you know, message to you the other day where I said, look, I would like to see the world change, and I feel, wallahi, I feel what gift Allah has given you, the world needs to kind of like hear it, see it, yet to realize what needs to be done to change society for the betterment, you know, especially for the next generation to come. So I would like it to see you out there, prominent. You know, look at, you know, where the sponsors, companies, you know, look at, what's his name? Dave Chappelle.
Yeah.
In comedy, what he does in addressing some issues. You know, his comedy, you know, even the one he's with SNL, with the issue of Kanye West and Kyrie Irving. The way he addressed that and made it into, that's what Allah's given him. But he's challenging the status quo. We need that from you, bro. Seriously, we need that from you.
Inshallah. It's interesting you mentioned these guys because those are actually, so when I first started doing spoken word, I actually got all the DVDs, like, you know, the Def Jams, the old ones, and I got all of them, and I used to watch them to learn about, because comedians, those were like the people, like you said, with Chappelle and stuff, those were like the original kind of like, and that's what I kind of see myself doing. And I guess this is where so if I explain my logic, I saw like people like Chappelle and stuff, they do movies, innit? And movies kind of build their, so they can go back to do the live. So I always said to myself, if I can't do movies, maybe I can write books. And if that builds the audience, then I can feed that into the live, you get what I'm saying? But to see what I went to go and watch him live, you know, in the O2.
When he came here?
Yeah. Like those, like when you mention that, those are the things I see and be like, it's just a man with a microphone talking, you know what I mean? Albeit some of the content is a bit like, you know, but he's reaching people with these messages in such a unique and like clever way, you know, and it's,
and it makes changes.
It changes.
Because watching it, the way he puts even the whole, I don't know, man, I'm gonna cut it out, but the whole Jew thing is like the way he.
Don't get me cancelled, bro.
The way, no, seriously,
I didn't come here to get cancelled. You know? What's he talking about?
That's the point. There you go.
It's like as
soon as he says it in a particular way, everyone understands it. Do you know what I'm trying to say to you?
Look at the
and
one,
it's taboo.
The one he done with the LGBTQ,
Even
how
that.
he had addressed that, transgenderism, how he addressed that.
Yeah, no.
This is my point. He's very articulate, and you can't argue with a guy.
He's very.
You know what I'm trying to say to you? So when you talk about being a forerunner, that's what forerunners are for, though. Is that they lay the footsteps so that other people have an easier way of life. And it's those people that are ingrained into history. It's not the ones that come after them. It's usually the ones that are at the forefront that are ingrained. But they go through the most struggles in life. That's just how life is supposed to be. You're not meant to become this. The Prophet said, you know, for me, his life is like the pinnacle of storytelling. A person who's lost their mum at a very young age, their dad before he was even born, then his granddad, then his wife, then he gets kicked out from his area, then he goes into another whole area, and then he comes back 10 years later and conquers the place that once kicked him out in such humbleness. And then you come 1,400 years later and his name is the most mentioned name on earth. That
And also, what did he see? Soon after he's passed away.
Yeah.
The empire expanded after him.
it.
So he was a forerunner, as you're saying with Suli. We are seeing the benefits of
Exactly.
his sacrifices and so on.
Exactly.
You might not see it.
Yeah, no, that breaks my heart, bro.
It is, but this is it. Actually.
Yeah.
This is it. And for us who believe in hereafter and that Allah is the one who rewards for things that are not seen, that's where the rewards is. That sometimes it's not today. Sometimes you have to go through the prison sentences, the beatings, the council, all of this kind of stuff. You don't see it. But when something is sincere and it's for the sake of Allah or however you want to look at it, but for us, for the sake of God, and we do it for that, you may not see the fruits today, but the fruits are in the hereafter, akhi. Do you get what I'm trying to say to you? And that's why my advice would have been when you went through that, never be despondent. I know it's easy to become despondent.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
this person gives you a negative review, that person gives you a negative review. Think, you know, what the flip is the point of doing this? I might as well just go make my lawyer money and I have no negative reviews. Do you know what I'm trying to say to you? But when you stick at a path, inshallah, akhi, like you said, right now, even today, there's really not a lot of poets like that. Do you know what I mean? Because people feel like you need to have the music in the background to make millions.
Yeah.
But once one person starts to make millions and successful, then everyone else feels like they can do it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm trying to say to you, akhi? So I hope Allah makes
one
it easy
thing
for
though,
you.
you know, what I was saying earlier, leadership. See, some people, okay, they're benefiting the Muslim community. Fine, that's what Allah's, given them. But being leaders, like the prophets and messengers, like Muhammad Ali mentioned, very few people have that skill and that knowledge and that articulation to do that. Akhi, that's your poetry. Your poetry reaches the masses. Yeah? This is where the impact lies. Chappelle reaches the masses. Muhammad Ali reaches the masses. Your poetry reaches the masses. That's where change is going to come. We're 5% of the population, Muslim, or 5 or 6. 95% are non-Muslims. How's the message of justice and goodness going to reach them? Suli Breaks.
What about Imam Secure? You know what I mean? You're spitting every Friday, bro. Talk about me. I actually wanted to ask you though. I've always wondered this. You know what I mean? Do you freestyle or do you have it written down? How does it work?
I think of like relevant topics. If he's stressing me out during the week, I think about that. I said, this is it. I get the points gathered in my mind. I said, I'm going to grill him on indirectly.
That's why we sit in the back.
It's like that,
I usually find him there. I usually turn to the side and find him there.
No, I'm sure, mashallah, he does well.
Nah, you're good, man. You're bad, bro. Like I said,
It's not about me. It's about you.
no, but I have to, like you said, let's be talking about gifts, alhamdulillah. Bro, I've read, I go to, my wife always laughs at me, like, she's not Muslim, she goes church, so she always, like, she's been going to the same place for years, and she always says, you're always going to so many different mosques. So when I came to this mosque, like, multiple, like, back to back, she was like, there must be something, because but it goes back to what I was saying when I was growing up, because I never had, like, a specific identity to one mosque. It was like whatever is nearest to me, I don't mind going. I went to the one in Whiteman Road for many years because I used to go with my little Akis. Like, there was like 2 Muslim boys, Ismail and Mohammed. We used to go there together during Ramadan because it was the closest. You know what I mean? And that's the only, and because of those 2 boys, I felt like an affinity. You know what I mean? But I never felt like that close. So I'll just go like
whatever.
Even near my son's school, like I googled it. I went there. There was mashallah, there was only like 10 brothers, bro. They laid out the thing in some community center. They got their little WhatsApp group. That's their Jummah. Every Friday. You get what I'm saying? And I'm like, this is. So, but when I came here, and it's funny because I have my guy Isla, very cool guy. I was living in New Cross. I lived in New Cross for about a year.
Oh, it's like, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you know, yeah. So he brought me here once, you know what I mean? And he was like, "This is the best masjid." And I came, you know, and like, you know, there was another brother, it was a black brother, and it was a good cook, but you know what I mean. But I never like, you know, I was just like, oh, there's another one in New Cross, it's closer, you know what I mean. So I've been here before once, you know. So.
Well, this was a few weeks ago. I think he was here, and I've seen.
He was here.
So I'm seeing from the member. I can see him there. And you know what I usually do? Brother, there's a brother here. He wants to say a few words. I thought I better not put that on him.
Nah.
You're going to do that today, though?
Nah.
Do that today.
Never. Like, it's a different... I have so much... Because when you step onto... It's not a stage, but when you're channeling or you're speaking the words of God, you get what I'm saying? Or you're communicating his message. That's a different responsibility. You know, I go in and I say what I feel like, you're carrying the weight, you know, of all of that. For me, I don't know, that's a different kind of pressure, you know, like, I go and say what I want, and not saying what I want, but what I believe and how true, but, you know, you have the Quran, and you know, this is, it's your responsibility to communicate this. You know, how many years of knowledge and you know, to the people. It's crazy. Like,
Today
every week.
Today you're going to be doing that.
It seems like you're both fans of each other. But
I'm a fan. I'm a fan. It's not an easy thing to do, and I feel like I think
At the end, we just paying one another.
I just take afterwards. Right, I got you. You know, but I feel like, and what I think is important about what you say is you say the things that people are afraid to say about the community. Do you get what I'm saying? Like things that. Like and it's not even about taboo subject. It's something like you came and you said, listen, you can't be letting the government take care of your children. Do you understand what I'm saying? You say, as a Muslim, you should have pride in the sense that you should try and work. You can't be wearing Nikes and, you know, the governments are taking care of your children or wearing Gucci and stuff. You should have shame. You should, you know, and I was like, a lot of people are not going to say that. Do you get what I'm saying? Because we know the status quo. We know it's easier just to, like, you know, not saying it's easier, but you can quote hadith and, you know, but you're saying what people are seeing day to day.
Look, it's the Nation of Islam. You know, when members would become Nation of Islam members, say, look, you can't be on welfare, because they understood that the African American community welfare keeps them in a place and subjugates them, stagnates them. So they made it a key thing. Look, if you want to be our member, come out of welfare, work, get a job, sell papers, do something.
Yeah,
it brings you, you know, what you call it, izzah, self-honor to you and your family and so on.
Yeah.
So restaurants is also, this, you know, and that's again Islamic teaching.
Yeah.
The Prophet, a man came, he said, look, he asked for money. He said, listen, take an axe, go cut firewood, sell that. That's better than asking. Yeah. So Islamic guidance. But back to you, Akhi. This is about Suli Breaks.
In essence, you both got similar jobs, though. You know, like, yes, he's an imam. He has to obviously seek knowledge and then revert that back to the community in what's the word for it now? Modern terms, understand it in our time. That's what you're basically saying he does, is that he's using the Quran and the Sunnah and he's teaching people of what is today, though. It's not saying 1,400 years ago we should go and do this. It's like, okay, in today's terms, how would the Prophet ﷺ handle this? Your one is similar. You're seeking knowledge, you're doing whatever you're doing all of this reading, whatever issues you're going through as well, and you're trying to portray it through artistic ways so that people understand it. Maybe they swallow it in a different way. Do you know what I'm trying to say to you? It's similar jobs, but like I said, with your one, maybe it's a bit more difficult because there's not as many imams as there is maybe poet speakers. So I can see the difficulty you're probably having in maybe breaking that ceiling, but I reckon you will, inshallah. Allah make it easy for you.
Ameen.
And I'm sure with the level of marketing you're doing, you'll get there, akhi. It's only a matter of time, inshallah.
Inshallah, yeah, and you know, it's actually, you gave me,
especially with Imam as your promoter. As your promoter from now
Don
on.
King. I think the point you made about me not being being like feeling like, you know, like rejected or but you know, like with the biggest thing that happened to me, I feel like the biggest setback needed to happen to me because up until that point, I felt like I was invincible. Not in like an ego standpoint, but I just felt like everything you can bend the world to your will all the time, but sometimes I feel like you have to be knocked down, and it's only when you get knocked down and you understand how low you can go and you realize that, okay, it didn't kill me, that you then come with a new energy. Do you get what I'm saying? So I've
build upon that foundation.
Build upon that, you know, because I mean, I've got so many setbacks, but it's like you kind of feel like you get to a point where it's like I've had the worst of them. Do you get what I'm saying? And then so, you know, as this guy says, he says the storm is always coming. It's always coming. You know what I mean? So you have to be, when it comes, you shouldn't be surprised. You know, you know, what's the other speaker? He goes, you either in adversity, coming out of adversity, or heading towards adversity. Do you get what I'm saying? So you always have to be prepared
Ready for it.
You know what I mean? And I feel
ups
like,
and downs.
and I think that was reminded to me. Like there's lower points that you can go. You haven't even reached the lowest yet. But inshallah, no matter how low you get, we've given you the tools. You know, you're healthy. You know, alhamdulillah, you can still get up and, you know, next tomorrow, one foot in front of the other. You know.
Yeah, 100%. Cool. We're getting usually to that 1 hour point. So pushing past now, you've gone. Obviously, you said you was not raised into Islam. You was your father became Muslim. You gone through a whole school system. You wasn't feeling, you know, more Muslim, or these people was treating you wrong, or the non-Muslims was treating you wrong. You felt very kind of, what's the word for it? Isolated, would you say? From both sides?
Yeah, I always felt like I was fluid in both sides. But like you said, I never felt in a place. Like in uni, I joined the Islamic Society, you know what I mean? But then, but at the same time, you're in uni and all your friends are doing this and you're like, I don't want to be, you know, it's that kind of like, you know, a majority of friends are normals. And, you know, like one of the guys from the Islamic Society, and this is no reason for me to be like, oh, for me not to go. But I remember we went to, we went a law class together, innit? And I remember I came into class once, he goes, oh, why are you wearing your hat like that? You look like a criminal. Do you get what I'm saying? And I was like...
What, backwards or something?
No, it wasn't even back, it was a woolly hat. I just had a woolly hat on, bro, like, you understand? So I had a woolly hat, but I probably had it like, you know, like side, like it's a woolly hat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that's not, it's actually crazy because... And I don't, and this is not, so the brother probably wasn't aware, but...
Of course, but for you, it kind of maybe hit something.
Yeah, but listen to this story. The way Allah works is crazy. So when I had my son, I was walking... I was pushing his buggy. He was just a newborn, innit? And, you know, I get tired, so I sit on a bench, innit? And I sit on a bench, and the person sitting next to me, he taps me. And I look at him, and he goes, and we look at each other. And I look, and the guy's fully bearded. He goes, oh, are you Suli? You went to Sheffield? The same brother I'm talking about.
Okay.
I said, what are you doing here? Have you moved to London? He goes, bro, I came for a job interview. I missed my train and I wanted to just take a seat somewhere. Imagine I started sitting and me and the brother spoke and he was like, you know, he was telling me about getting high. I was like, he's obviously grown, you know what I mean? And that's why I don't feel no way about the situation. But it was just the timing of how we sat there. And he goes, I was just about to get on my train back up north and I missed it by a minute. And I thought, let me just relax. You know what I mean? The way I
kicked it.
Huh?
And you lot kicked it
we
like...
talk and we spoke, you know what I mean? And it's so crazy because he was, and you know, back then it was like, I thought I was doing something wrong, you know what I mean? Because I was like, I'm not doing well in law. And he was like, bro, he said, I've only just got a law job now. I've graduated. And you know, after I sat down, I thought, wow, I've traveled the world. I've done all these things, you know what I mean? And in this time where I just thought I wasn't doing anything, do you get what I'm saying? You would have thought, you know?
Yeah. You're
when
comparing yourself to other people that even at the same time not even doing as well as you think.
Yeah, and at the time I was really thinking like, wow, you know, at the time in the uni, I remember saying, I'm not doing something right. These guys are all on a straight path. You know, I'm going into the poetry, trying to make a takeoff. I was like, I'm not figuring it out. But I thought, in my head, I would have assumed that he's already doing law and he's flying, do you understand? But the journey is different for everyone. And it was such a humbling but beautiful moment, do you understand? And he was telling me about, you know, I haven't been Umrah. And he was like, let me send you the thing to go Umrah so then I can get some of the reward. You know what I mean? I said, you know, but now that I said, I just remember that experience. And it was just crazy how, you know, it was mad how that happened.
So in that, the point I was going to make is like, you went through all of that, but would you say yourself at this stage in life now, you found yourself grounded, like community-wise or whatever kind of field you're in, do you find yourself at this stage of life, you find yourself to be grounded?
Yeah, I feel like I've always been like, fair. Do you mean grounded in life or like in Islam or what do you mean?
Like, have you found yourself, because you said you didn't know where to fit into.
Yeah.
Would you say you fit into somewhere, or would you say, you know what, you like your single kind of path?
I feel like, I feel like I'm still searching, you know what I mean? I feel like I'm still searching. I think now that I have kids, it's important for me to expose them to around as many communities as possible. So hopefully, you know, they have people that can teach them things that I can't. You know what I'm saying? But I feel like I'm a nomadic, like, you know. But in my essence, I just have like a nomadic kind of like process. You know, I'm always, you know,
traveling.
Oh, yeah, not even physically, but I think mentally. You know, I'm always trying to, like, I read a lot about history, you know, the history of Islam, the history of Christianity. Like, I find that stuff so interesting, you know what I mean? I'm always exploring, like, different. So I feel like, so some of my friends are Jewish, some of my friends are Christian, some of them are Muslim, you know what I mean? I have lots of different, but it's like, I don't feel like I don't feel like I belong to any group. If I had to belong to any, it's the Muslims. You know what I mean? But like I said, I don't have a specific mosque. But you know, I'm with my affinities. You know, I go to the masjid every Friday.
Course,
without fail. That's kind of like, and I want my sons to know that they have that kind of like affinity, specifically with Islam as well. You know what I mean? Because like I said, alhamdulillah, like, a lot of my family are Muslim. My sisters, my nephews, they're all Muslim. So that influence is all there. But I just want them to be able to feel comfortable in that environment. I like that now. I feel like is the time where they can,
Of course.
So even like taking my son to the masjid, like I'll bring him here when he's on, but I'll take him to the masjid from once in a while. But he doesn't really like, like the masjid near my area, it's a great masjid as well, but there's not really a community. Do you get what I'm saying? Like there's no school. Probably is like, but it's, so.
Yeah. It's or like a hub like it is here.
Yeah, on Eid, like they did a massive thing at the park. Like my whole family went there, do you get what I'm saying? But we still drove back to London so we could be with my actual like family, my sisters, they moved to Dubai now. So it's just like, yeah, but I still feel like I'm still searching for where I fit in, but I know where I think mentally, but I feel like...
No. Khair. Lastly, we ask our colleagues who usually come, what kind of advice, after obviously all you've experienced in life, that you think the key thing you would teach, for example, your son maybe, your son's like, what would you advise them when they get to an age of like 10, 15? What would you think the most important thing to teach them would be through your experience?
My experience? It's nothing really profound. I think I always try to... I think I always lean towards business kind of thing, but I think it's just that it's important to fail. Like, do you get what I'm saying? It's important to be not afraid. Like my son is always like, I don't want to try this. You get what I'm saying? I think it's important to not be afraid, not to fail, but also know who you are. Just obviously they're kids, you understand what I'm saying? But I'm always trying to teach them to be like, just because your friends are doing this doesn't mean it. That's one of my experiences where it was like, nobody in your social group is fasting, but you're fasting. You're playing games, but they'll be like, "Are you supposed to pray now?" Do you understand what I'm saying? Being that person, but that never made me less of who I was. Being the person, knowing who I was. You get what I'm saying? And I feel like so much where a lot of the times we go wrong is when we're trying to orient ourselves around our peers, innit? I think one of the biggest things that I was able to do was, have that
from that.
Yeah, do you get what I'm saying?
And know yourself.
And still find confidence, you get what I'm saying?
That's a key advice, man. Appreciate you coming. It's been very beneficial, this conversation.
It's a pleasure.
And I hope, Allah helps you in all your affairs, akhi, and makes you successful in this world and in the hereafter.
Ameen.
I see you as a very sincere human being. And inshallah, the rest of the world sees that as well, inshallah.
Ameen.
Jazakumullah khair for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.